Now, so what we've done is thought about what would happen immediately when this price ceiling gets implemented. But let's now think about 10 or 20 years down the line. Imagine you've graduated college, you've become a real estate developer, and you're specializing in student housing. You build student housing complexes. So this, can be a pretty profitable thing. And you start looking around Northern Ohio for where you're going to place your next student housing complex. You're evaluating a few different places, Ashland and Worcester and Mansfield and wherever else you're looking at. And in particular, you start looking at the laws that are in place in these towns. You look at Worcester and Mansfield and you see that you're going to be unlimited in the price that you can charge, but you look at Ashland and you see that there's going to be a maximum price that you can charge for your housing. Do you think you're likely to build that housing complex in Ashland? I think there's a real good chance that you choose not to, right? And for the people who own housing that's used by students in Ashland, over time, some of them are going to look to get out of that market, right? Because it's just not as profitable as what they were expecting. So what's going to happen in 10, 20 years' time is this supply of housing starts to fall back, starts to shift back to the left. And so we end up with less student housing available. Now, I've highlighted a couple of points on this graph. This one here is the old long-run equilibrium when housing unit owners were anticipating getting a price of $2,500. They would build housing consistent with that. But in the long run, they're not going to do that, right? In the long run, they're going to say to themselves, hey, look, if we're only getting 2,000, then we're not going to build as much housing as we had. We're only going to replace some of the housing that wears out, if you like. And so in the long run, we're actually going to build this much housing, only 1,000 units. So 20, 30 years down the line, we're going to anticipate that we have even fewer housing units available. Now, if you think back to when we were looking at elasticity in lecture 7, I guess, we were thinking about price elasticity of supply, and we thought we saw that the time frame that we look at is a really critical aspect of that price elasticity of supply. Our initial graphs, our initial supply curves that we were looking at were short-run supply curves. But in the long run, our decisions are more strongly affected by the price. So we can think of this as a point on the long-run supply curve of housing, and this as another point on that long-run supply curve of housing. And so in the long run, this is what our supply curve ends up looking like. The important thing to take from this is that even if we don't get a big response to that government intervention in the market right now, in the long run, we're going to end up with an even larger response.